acquiring resources that you don't have rights to have. Now, in the case of open source, there are rights. Nobody owns it in an economic sense, but there are very strong norms about who has the rights to it, who has the rights to make decisions. And typically, it's the founder who becomes the administrator who has the right to decide what does or does not go into the source code repository, and decide what direction the whole project is going. So yeah, there's another case where
that's kind of a power, but
it's a power. But
is that the economic opportunism that you're talking about?
Well,
I can imagine
here.
Well, I mean, one answer is the Hobbesian answer, right? If you've got opportunism, you have a sovereign power. Russians opportunism.
Sounds like the administrator.
That's one way around as Grandmother says. Right?
But I mean, you mentioned things like cheating and so forth. What's to cheat?
Like in cheating, it might be forking. Okay, a fork happens when a group from one project decides to take the source code and go start another project. Well, it's absolutely legal. Nobody stops it, but there's a strong norm against it. That's part of that right of the founder to make those kind of decisions. So that would be an example of opportunism, but not really economic. It's a it has a different kind of opportunism. Right. So it does happen. It does happen.
It could be a power thing too. I mean, to your point, it could be he who is the founder is the powerful, so therefore steal some of his code and go find
Yeah. Now there's certainly between Richard, so the founder, Stallman, and
that's a good point.
there's a big power play. Now Linux is a big asset.
Yeah.
Who gets credit for gets the founder? They don't necessarily own it, but they certainly want the credit, the ego credit.
So far, though, what stopped the kind of forking is the norms of the community. And so another way to sort of approach this might be, it opens up a new set of research possibilities, right? But also, if you went back 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, and did the same study, assuming source forge and open source still existed, would you necessarily get the same results? Because after all, when you start talking about things like norms, we're talking about historically constructed concepts, right? I mean, especially since there's no, again, sovereign force to really, maintain that. And so, are we just looking at a moment in time, and movement, I think, idea is a very nice analogy. We're looking at a moment in time in the history of open source software that may have, for example, highly motivated people, very committed to a set of principles and values, sharing very similar
Like the early stage of a religion.
Early stage of a religion. Exactly. And just boy,
Oh my goodness.
Those martyrs.
If you listen to the open source people, they don't use the word religion. They use a lot of the same terminology.
Yeah, sure.
They do.
And as the
The
Puritans,
evangelists that they are.
They call themselves evangelists.
They are evangelists, yes.
As the,
Preaching the open source, yeah.
and as the Puritans found when they came to New England, it's easy to maintain that fervor for the first generation, right? They start to go their separate ways, and the second, we don't know what will happen, but I mean, to the extent that some of this is constructed by the historic moment in which we're living, you might wonder if over time that would start to break down.
Right. Yeah.
It might be easier to see something like that if you look at the Wikipedia model.
Yeah.
Because it's older?
No, because it has more opportunities
There are
for.
more opportunities. Well, did I send you that
Social
article?
chaos.
Finish the
Yes.
sentence. For what?
For
Social
social
chaos.
chaos, for opportunities for power plays, for disagreement, for all of those
And
things.
political maneuvering.
Yeah.
Exactly, it has all kinds of opportunities for that, yeah.
I believe there was an article on Wikipedia, about Wikipedia recently that pointed out what a high percentage of work is actually done by a relatively small core of the core.
And
Yeah.
actually, there's a lot of, and even within that group, I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about you know, and they're fighting with each other,
Really.
you know, so it's,
So it's a
yeah.
group that knows each other and
Oh,
it's very
yeah.
close.
Probably a university close to us, oh no.
But I think the ability to get beyond those controversies
Right.
and opportunism is a mark of a successful project. And I guess what you're saying is, will that continue? Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Okay, well, if the conditions are not simply the kind of traditional measures of structure, what are some of the others, you know, and that's, I think, helps to flesh out the platform idea from not just the, you know, the technical
Right.
interface is obviously, well, it's sufficiently necessary condition perhaps, but it seems like the other parts of the platform are going to take us much more into the social,
Yes.
political,
Yes.
cultural.
Excellent point. Yes, and for example, I could definitely see part of the requirement for a good platform to be the control of opportunism and abuse. And we talked about that when we looked at creating platforms for open source learning.
Oh, really?
At some point, we looked at, you know, what would it take to create an open web repository of learning modules. And that was one of the requirements, is that we didn't really call it a platform, I think we used to say template. But back then, we said, you know, it or somebody needs to control abuse and opportunism, and that's one of the requirements. Susan?
Couple of comments. One was to the organization literature. There's early in kind of the structured research, there was, you know, are you centralized or are you decentralized? And what's good about centralization and what's, you know what I mean? And then what are the rules and the values? And what's all this, you know, it's like you keep saying norms and values and, you know what I mean? And that's